Greetings everyone. So you might think, what is one of the most difficult starts in EU4? And one of the possible answers to this is this small nation here in the northern Africa. Uh, so why it's so different from others, and why it's so difficult? So first of all, the nation has very small development. It's only total 6 development and 2 provinces, with nothing particular good about them. Also, as you can see, it's one of the rare Ibadi nations. So basically, all these Sunni nations around them are always unfriendly to you, uh, and you get negative bonuses with them. Uh, so also you are landlocked, you don't have access to sea, and there's very little nations next to you where you could expand. And also, to top it off, your government is a theocracy, so you can't form royal marriages, so that makes making alliances even harder. So, and also because of religion, you will always be at disadvantage, because your neighboring countries won't like you that much. So for example, in this case, I have this nation which actually have friendly attitudes towards me, so getting an alliance with them is easy. But these other nations will, at least I haven't seen a situation where I had a friendly relationships with them, so it's going to always be uh, very difficult. uh, and this nation over here is usually rivaled, and they usually ally Tunis as fast as possible, so you can't even attack them. uh, you can actually attack them when you, for example, wait enough time and Tunis is in a war with one of these nations, or maybe with Portugal and Castile, so they don't join the war. So that's a possibility, and you can get a few extra uh, provinces, but still it's still very uh, primitive 3 development provinces. uh, so in this situation, I found that it really depends a lot on luck. You'll be doing starting over countless times. I would recommend saving and copying save files if you're actually getting somewhere, so you can always backtrack at least some parts. And you'll always also you'll have to play tall, so you have to develop your capital, so you get more income, because money will also be an issue, as well as to increase your force limit, because it's super low and you can't really increase it that much. And also, increasing maybe just a few force limit points may at some point deter, for example, Tunis from attacking. uh, if you play long enough, of course, Tunis mostly build uh, regimental camps, so they'll still have a lot more force limit. But at the moment, and closer to the start of the game, when you don't have these buildings everywhere, uh, they don't have that much force limits. So in case you can get like 10 force limit yourself, it may deter them from attacking. So what I found out that first of all you have to look for those situations when you can attack. You should take this country as fast as possible. In my attempts I tried very different approaches. I tried to take some provinces and take vassals as well. uh, there isn't, in my opinion, a best way to do it, but uh, it depends really a lot on luck. Also, what I found that this nation over here, they're protected by Tunis, so you can't attack them, but they quite often ally themselves with this nation. So in case you're fighting only them and not Tunis, and also them, if you can manage taking them over, you can vassalize them. Their provinces are very undeveloped, so it's easy to get them in a separate peace deal as a vassal. It those few extra units can uh, help you. Also, two vassals, especially if you leave this nation with all their three provinces, uh, you could maybe take two of them and leave them with one, so you have less borders with Tunis. But leaving them both with three provinces and having them as vassals will mean that you'll be fighting really hard to get the liberty desire below 50%. So that's also something you have to keep in mind. So in that case, they won't actually be helping you in a war. So after this and this, where else you can expand. Also, this nation at some point they might prove useful in a war, but in the end it's something that you have to deal with them and take them as well. So because they often are allied with Tunis as well, but it can change. And also, this is the nation from which you can take land, but not at the start, maybe a bit later, because they are, in my experience, quite often they are allied with Morocco, and they are rivaled with Tunis. So, and as well, they will quite often be called into wars with Morocco against the Europeans. So you could attack them when they are weak, because they are losing the battle against the Europeans. Uh, if they are rivaled each other's, then it's also a possibility that when they start losing to the Europeans, Tunis will also declare war on them to take some of these provinces. So it's even a bigger mix, and then easier to take provinces from them. But even then, it can be difficult, because they could still make quite a few units, and if you have, let's say, 6, 7, 8, 10 units at max, it could still be very difficult to actually fight them, even if almost all units are mercenaries. But it's very situational. You have to wait for those wars between these nations and wait for them to be very weak. So when you can conquer some of these provinces, Morocco will be next, because they will most likely won't ally Tunis, so they end up alone. And they also have the enemies in Europe. So if the Europeans attack again, you can take these provinces. And for example, here's a gold province with good development, and they also develop these provinces. So also you can see a 12 development province. They develop these provinces even more. So it's a very good opportunity. Uh, and then it's Tunis, and it's the most difficult opponent here, because they afterwards they quite often ally Ottomans, so you can't really attack them. Sometimes I have seen that they ally Mamluks, and in rare cases they ally both, so there's no way you can attack them. So first of all, it's also that you have to wait for if one of their allies are at war and they won't come to help. But even then, it can be very hard, because they have very rich provinces and they will always be ahead of you, uh, both in technologies and as well as money, force limit, manpower, everything. So uh, it can be very difficult. You also have to keep an eye on how big their army is and what are their force limits. So if the army is bigger than you, starts getting quite bigger than yours, expect a war soon, which will you probably lose. So you have to keep your army as big as possible. So you have to develop the provinces, you have to build regimental camps as soon as you can. Those are definitely a must. Otherwise, they'll just attack you. Uh, but eventually you'll be able to fight them. But also, it might be uh, that you can't actually fight them unless they are called in a war, for example, of Ottomans against Mamluks, and Mamluks are losing, and the Ottomans actually come here and quite a bit reduce their manpower and the units. So uh, that's something you have to look out for. So with this nation, there's a high chance that you'll be losing game after game after game, just because the conditions aren't perfect to be actually to fight them. And also regarding the religion, you won't be able to ally pretty much anything from here, just besides maybe this nation, which quite often are friendly to you, unless by some freak chance you can get a start where somebody else, especially one of these nations, want to be friendly with you, then yeah, you could get an alliance, but I'm not sure that's even possible. And this trend of, unless you change the religion, of course, also continues later, that even if you are expanding here quite a bit, you still won't be able to get any alliances. Uh, in my playthrough, when I was already done with Tunis, I was, and starting a bit on the Mamluks, I was able to ally Ottomans just because of rivalries, and they finally ended up friendly with me, because well, I was getting quite big myself, so they don't want to be friendly with small nations. And uh, depending on the situation in Europe, what else is that you might, especially when you have conquered all the northern parts of here, you might eventually be able to ally with France. Not sure if anybody else, but France is a good candidate. You won't be able to ally Castile or Spain or Portugal, because they'll most likely always want your provinces. Other nations are just too far away. But later, if you are rivaled with Castile or Spain, and for example, you could also take England as a rival just to increase the relations, you might finally end up allying France, which will be a huge boost. But that's also very hard because you'll always be getting huge negative bonuses, because your army will always be smaller, your army and your navy will always be smaller, and also because of the religion. And I haven't been able, also as well as the friendly status. So in my playthrough, I was keeping relations high with them, and we had those rivalries, and so finally they, by some freak chance, they switched their opinion to friendly as well, so I was able to ally them. But otherwise you are basically on your own in this one. So when you're done with this area, it gets a lot easier, of course, but then you end up also against another wall. You have Spain over here, which is very strong, without France, or maybe some huge wars going on when you could take some provinces from them when they are totally weak. It's impossible. Over here, well, you can take some from Mamluks, since Mamluks will in most games gets eaten up by the Ottomans, but you also might end up that you are like split over here somewhere, and the Ottomans might actually break your alliance if you have any with them, and then decided to become hostile because they want your provinces. And then you also might have some expansion areas over here in Africa, but otherwise you are quite limited on what you can do. On my playthrough, I was actually getting quite in the late game. At 18th century, I owned all this area. I was up most of this area, and maybe starting getting a bit in here, but I decided I want to roll back a bit, because I'm also trying to get that achievement to unify religion as the Ibadi one, so I was going nowhere in that regard. But when I rolled that back a few, at least 150 years, I was able to ally France in that game, as well as Castile, and all the Spain was weakened by wars, and France was attacking them. They had a huge war, a coalition war that failed miserably, and I was able to get a few, maybe 2-3 provinces over here, so I got a foothold. Then when I allied France, and afterwards with France's help I was able to get more provinces, as well as giving some for France as well, so we can keep being allies. And in the end, as well as I broke out their alliance in a peace deal with Portugal, and I was also able to take in 2 or 3 wars, I think 3 wars of Portugal, and eventually I was able to form Andalusia as a nation from owning these provinces, and I was able to connect my lands to France, so they have access to me. I wasn't getting much further here, but I still have time, and but I might actually roll back once more because uh, my game in the 18th century wasn't that very good. So we'll see where that leads me. So this is my current game, where I have been able to expand quite a bit. So I'm still the same religion. I started this as the same nation. So for example, I can show you now how much I developed the provinces. So as you can see, my original capital has a lot of development. So plus 19, uh, not much in these provinces, but I did probably. And for example, these provinces over here, I was talking about Morocco. You can see that these provinces, especially these, are quite developed, so those are very good. Also, you can see I took all the Portugal and parts of Spain, so I was able to form Andalusia, and I'm allied with France. And this was a fun thing because during the religious war of Europe, the League War, uh, the Holy Roman Empire was collapsed totally and ceased to exist. So that was definitely a first for me. So there's no Holy Roman Empire anymore. So that's very interesting outcome. So if I want to get the achievement of unified religion, it's very hard. So because Ottomans are one of the most powerful, as you can see, they're pushing in a lot in this area, in in in, in Austria, and at the moment they're also at war and they are winning, and Austria and Spain is losing, and Austria is actually in a union under Spain. I also at some point I lost these provinces. This was before I got the alliance with the French, so I was just wasn't able to fight them. So I just had to peace out. There was no way I could avoid a war because they were very hostile to me. So and with no strong allies, you just can't fight the Ottomans. So even in these wars, I'm just relying that this 60 stack is going to come and help me, otherwise you can't really fight the Ottomans. Uh, I did went in a bit in Africa. As you can see, this is my vassal over here, but not much else to say. Also, just took these provinces which are required for this, but I'm not sure I'll be able to get it. But it's something I want to try further and maybe do one or two rollbacks as well some years. So I'm taking doing often copies of saves so I can roll back if I don't like where I'm going. So some might say it's cheating on Iron Man, but well, with small nations like these and hard achievements, I mean it's already very hard, if not impossible. So playing without any backup saves and being able to roll back is just impossible. So as you can see, I'm in the one of the great powers. Uh, for me, technologies, I'm finally catching up, but still behind. Regarding ideas, uh, to be actually able to fight effectively, I was thinking I should take a lot of military ideas. I'd always take quantity. Offensive are always good. I, but I also decided I might try quality ideas because of the combat abilities and extra discipline as well. So we'll see how that helps me, because they, other than the cavalry compatibility, they don't have any bonuses, and their military are quite generic and quite weak, so you need a lot of ideas to be able to push better. So this is definitely, this small country over here is definitely one of the hardest starts I have tried, and I was able to get past the initial part and get far in the game, but it's definitely a very for experienced players, and it can get very frustrating to get somewhere, but when you actually do it, it can be very satisfying. So that's all for now. So good luck with your conquers, and see you soon.